Hey guys, this is Nick, and you're watching Paco's Insight. Today we're going to be discussing the the end of week one Derek Chauvin trial. Last week we started with a good episode on it, and today they had the police chief, the Minneapolis police chief, on stand, as well as the emergency room doctor who first observed Mr. Floyd when he entered the hospital there in Minneapolis, and he gave his testimony and opinions. We have a little video we're going to watch from like CBS News or whatever about how it opened today, and we'll just discuss some of the things that I observed throughout the day and kind of watching that. Anyways, Paco, send it.
Yeah. What's up, Richard? So Nick basically summarized who they spoke to today. I saw a little bit of it myself. Overall, I gotta say I don't think it's looking too good for Mr. Chauvin. I don't know.
You know, the defense hasn't done anything, Paco. It seems like it's just been strictly offensive. It kind of seems like the prosecution really has their ducks in an order. They're well prepared for the case, and they're definitely making a good argument against Mr. Chauvin. But we still yet to see what Mr. Chauvin's defense really is.
Yeah.
So let's see if maybe the video we have today will cover any of the thoughts from this morning. Maybe cover some of that stuff. It's hard to say, I think.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
Yeah, my main concern, obviously, the medical training they received. So again, what Mr. Chauvin know, what it was his training, what was his experience up to that date, all relevant. When we start getting into the opinions, how many use of force opinions do we have? It's cumulative, I think, possibly already. But I think as we go through each of those, it's got to be talking about training that the defendant received. Not just, here's trainings we had. Because if he didn't take the training, it doesn't go to his intent or knowledge.
Understood, Your Honor. The workforce specify what in-service training the defendant has attended, and then we have the curriculum, the materials that were presented, during those training blocks.
And crisis intervention training seems to be relevant to this case. Use of force training is relevant to this case. Medical training is relevant to this case. So all those summaries of the training that the defendant received, according to the curriculum, that's, I think, all admissible. I think when we start getting into opinions about use of force, I think we should visit about that before we start blurting out opinions. We've already had several, and I think we need to go and tread carefully because of whether their opinion is something that is the appropriate topic even for expert testimony, because some of this stuff...
Pause it, Paco.
Is...
All right, so what the judge is talking about here, for anybody who followed along, and I wish I saw this before. Late last week, they had the most senior officer in the Minneapolis Police Department testify. I want to say he was a lieutenant, and I also venture to say I think he started in 87. He came up, gave some opinions. He didn't directly cite the use of force continuum. They talked about it. He answered some questions about it, but he's not a use of force instructor. He doesn't train anyone. So at the end of the day, it was just his professional experience, previous training and experience that led him to formulate those opinions. But the judge is saying, we want more than this. We want somebody's qualifications to reflect what they say, not just an opinion. And I think he knows that because he's bringing on the chief and he's bringing on the doctors. And I think he's concerned about just bringing anybody and anywhere on the stand, And that makes a lot of sense because you don't just want to have anybody on the stand testifying in this case. It's a big case. What do you think, Paco?
Yeah, no, it's a huge case. And they do got to tread lightly on who they have, on who they pick to talk, because, even though everybody that's talked about Derek Chauvin hasn't exactly made his case any better. Nobody's really been defending his actions, which they shouldn't. Even the chief of police was, ripping on him today too.
Well, let's find out, because I don't know. I didn't really watch the chief. I just watched a little of the doctor.
Yeah.
But
the chief basically, from what I saw, basically was like, yeah, he flat out murdered this guy.
Within the jury's knowledge, and they should be able to do without an expert. So, but I think let's just kind of go with that. For now.
If I may just, as to the cumulative discussion, just
Right.
to add to that, foreseeing Mr. Nelson being an able defense attorney, I would anticipate if I were to just simply try to prove my case with experts, he would say, the state hired some experts to say this was unreasonable, but what do the people who actually do the work say?
Well, and I think we've gotten 2 of those already.
And that's the reason. I'm just, I need to cover the appropriateness of the use of force really from every angle to give the full picture of the reasonable officer. I understand at some point enough is enough.
Well, let me be a little more clear. I think you have the right to somebody who's actually done the defensive tactics, use of force training, whatever, to give their opinion about this case. But not everybody, not every trainer. You can take one who's done the training, knows the curriculum that Mr. Chauvin actually participated in, and say and give an opinion there. But I think then we're done with the MPD people who can give an opinion regarding
this judge is a swish. He's not taking any prisoners on this. You can leave that screen open, because we're going to get right back to the video. I just want to make a quick comment on this judge. This judge is a swish with that maxi pad for a mask he's wearing. This is just...
Yeah, I was going to comment on that mask. Like, it looks weird in the video. I don't know. Looks like rivet, and then an elastic band.
That's swish. I think that what he's saying is that this attorney for the prosecutions is bringing anybody and everybody in to say, hey, Derek Chauvin really made a huge mistake, and no cop supports that. And the judge is saying, I don't need to hear that. Bring me qualified people or stop talking about it. So points already been established.
Yes.
So let's go ahead.
Yeah, I got to give props to that judge. He's like, bring people here who need to be here, but other than that, don't be bringing everybody and their mother to testify,
Exactly.
So, does that make a little more sense?
It does.
The defense attorney was like,
Okay.
Does it make sense?
Well, it's good to have a plan that's consistent with the court's rulings.
And I guess the court will let me know if you feel I'm
Yeah, let's just go sidebar if we have to in the
Yes.
midst of all this. Because as we know, everything's fluid. So, all right, we'll get the jury.
And the judge just called in the jury there in the case of Derek Chauvin, the former Minneapolis police officer charged in the killing of George Floyd. The attorneys and the judge right now were just discussing, without the jury present, what witnesses will be allowed to say. Law enforcement witnesses are expected to be called one after the other. And so the discussion was how many of those witnesses will be allowed to offer their opinion on use of force, specifically on the use of force against George Floyd, given 2 law enforcement officers have already offered their opinion that they thought that it was unreasonable.
All right, Paco.
Which...
Let's try to see if there's anything more to this video. All right, I don't think we need to hear that opinion. What's this here at the end? What's that? Play that.
Argument that obviously if it only comes from an expert, that's not enough. We need everyone that's in that sort of sphere, from the training personnel to the people who actually implement and actually do the hands-on training, what their opinion is, so that way we can get a full body of work.
And Kenneth, we understand before the cameras turned on and the audio turned on, when we heard that discussion between the attorneys and the judge, they had a private hearing. It was on the the record, but it was not on camera. We did not have access to the audio. And that sounded like it was relevant to potential juror misconduct. And while we couldn't see it on the feed, the pool reporters were there, and we are allowed to report on it. What happened in court this morning?
That would be a swish for Derek Chauvin, right? Let's say that there's a jury issue and they can get a mistrial. That would be a potential swish for him and a terrible L for anybody who's, trying to get justice in the case. But when you hear that there's issues with the jurors, I'd start to get a little tight. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, if there's an issue, with the jurors, it can lead to a hung jury, and cases can go longer than what they need to.
Or you can get a straight up mistrial and the dude walks out the door.
Yeah.
And say, listen, something was wrong, this, and that, and he's potentially out on the double jeopardy. You can't try him again. He's gone.
Yeah.
So something like that would be a little bit much in the way of intimidation for me. That's what I think about when I see stuff like this. Definitely concerning for sure.
No, yeah.
So sadly, this particular video isn't covering some of the testimony from today because it was from this morning. But I'll shed some light on what my opinions are.
Yeah,
you can't continue to bring in these police officers and berate this guy. They're trying to prove a point that not just the trainers know the policy, but every police officer thinks that this is excessive.
Yep.
But we watched a video, I think, in the past where Chauvin said a couple of things about what happened and what his opinions were and what his role was in that. Excuse me. I think that's very telling that his mind wasn't on an excessive use of force, but he thought what he was doing was very reasonable. And it'll be interesting to see what this judge and the jury presume to be reasonable. And the defense is bringing all these other officers in to say, this is what reasonable really is saying this is not good and that's all unreasonable. So we'll see, man. It's a real technical sort of vibe that I get from this. It's real technical, and just that people are not generally happy with this. So let's see what it is. Paco, you find anything else, buddy?
Yeah, I found the testimony from today from the former Minneapolis police training commander.
Oh boy,
so
let's check this one out.
And I also found the clip I was talking about earlier where the police chief says that Chauvin violated the use of force policy.
Oh, here we go. Good.
So these two videos should be a swish.
A swish.
A swish.
I'd like to show you what's been received as Exhibit 17. I'm going to ask you, officer, as you look at Exhibit 17, is this a trained technique that's by the Minneapolis Police Department when you were overseeing the training unit?
It is not.
And why not?
Well, use of force according to policy has to be, consistent with MPD training. And what we train are neck restraints, the conscious and unconscious neck restraint. So per policy, a neck restraint is compressing one or both sides of the neck using an arm or leg. But what we train is using one arm or two arm to do a neck restraint.
And how does this differ?
I think that she's referring to a chokehold. I don't think she's referring to this, which is not a chokehold.
No.
If the guy's handcuffed, that's going to be the biggest thing on this. If he wasn't handcuffed, it'd be a little different. But the fact that he's handcuffed, how resistant could he be? It's just not a good look. This Exhibit 17 is a mofo to get around. How can you get out of this right here?
Yeah.
What kind of improvised position position that is. So that's not what we train.
So right there, she's like,
Yeah,
that's not what we train.
Think about that. You know what I'm saying? This guy, that Exhibit 17 is a mofo. Let's watch the chief. If you're ready to watch the chief, we'll get into his testimony.
Sir, based upon your review of all of the information that you just mentioned, do you believe that the defendant followed departmental policy 5-304 regarding de-escalation?
I absolutely do not agree with that.
And how so?
That action is not de-escalation. And when we talk about the framework of our sanctity of life, and when we talk about the principles and values that we have, that action goes contrary to what we're taught.
As you reflect on Exhibit 17, I must ask you, is this a trained Minneapolis Police Department defensive tactics technique?
It is not.
We read the departmental policy on neck restraints. Is this a neck restraint?
The conscious neck restraint by policy mentions light to moderate pressure. When I look at Exhibit 17, and when I look at the facial expression of Mr. Floyd, that does not appear in any way, shape, or form that is light to moderate pressure.
So is it your belief then that this particular form of restraint, if that's what we'll call it, in fact violates departmental policy?
I absolutely agree that violates our policy. Once Mr. Floyd, and this is based on my viewing of the videos, once Mr. Floyd had stopped
All right, hang on a second here, Paco.
Yeah.
We still got another minute or so left of this, but I have a couple of notes I took here quick. He talks about de-escalation as policy 504. Okay. De-escalation, once you're in a use of force, you just tell me, like, if this makes common sense to you. Once you're, like, fighting with somebody, de-escalation tactics is variable, okay? Is what is considered a de-escalation tactic after you've gone hands-on with somebody? What does that look like? Does that look like use of a firearm, use of OC, baton, handcuffing? What is de-escalation? That's my first question.
Yeah.
So how could you violate the de-escalation policy if you've had to use so much force that this officer had a threat safety level? That's one problem with that particular piece of testimony.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing I have is neck restraints. Why they have neck restraints in policy at all boggles my mind. It's okay to put someone in a chokehold in Minneapolis. You don't see the liability issue with training a chokehold. I feel like that's a really bad thing. Which leads me to my last point, and this is the one I really want your opinion on. And my biggest concern on the case is, not my biggest, but one of my biggest is, could poor policy cause Derek Chauvin to walk out of this case? They have a de-escalation policy that we don't know what it looks like. But it's implied that you de-escalate every single situation no matter what the level of force is. They train on neck restraints. Why should you be putting your hands on someone's neck unless it's your life is an immediate risk? Is beyond me. They shouldn't train for that. You have a gun. All right, so let's get to prior or poor policy, which is the mother lode of this whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
You got a policy on de-escalation and neck restraints. I think their policies might be broken. And that could be an issue, because if he was following policy, and even though these guys here, the chief says he's not, if he can prove that he was somehow, which would be hard, but I don't know, they could have poor policies that would trash this whole case.
Mm-hmm. No.
Paco?
Yeah, no, it comes down like Nick's saying, They find one loophole in their policy, he could walk. You know,
And I think
find-
that we're already seeing some things here that are not.
and they touched base too on moderate to mild pressure for the neck restraints or for the holds.
That's like me saying, "Can you define queef?" It's absurd. Do you know what I mean? That's an absurd moderate to mild pressure. What is that? Doesn't make any sense. So when you see something like this, that was the first sign that something might not be right here. We're talking about defining moderate to mild pressure. Well, what's the guy's threat perception? You're talking a lot of technical terms here, but you got a policy that's not extremely articulate as far as neck restraints are concerned.
Yeah.
You can use legs. She didn't articulate. She kind of pushed on. We're talking about chokeholds. Well, you said legs.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's continue.
Certainly, once he was in distress and trying to verbalize that, that should have stopped. There's an initial trying to just get him under control in the first few seconds, but once there was no longer any resistance, and clearly when Mr. Floyd was no longer responsive and even motionless, to continue to apply that level of force to a person proned out, handcuffed behind their back, that in no way, shape, or form is anything that is by policy. It is not part of our training, and it is certainly not part of our ethics or our values.
Yeah.
So I'm going to cut in here real quick, Paco. Actually, how about you tell me what you think about that? Because I started the last segment, so I don't want to keep going on here.
No, it's not a good look. Knee in somebody's neck. It's, to be honest with you, chokeholds in any department shouldn't be a thing. Chokeholds.
Agreed.
I mean, NYPD used to do chokeholds. And just a couple of years ago, there was a lawsuit because of chokeholds. Now NYPD can't even do chokeholds anymore.
Right.
NYPD, they're not allowed to do chokeholds. Because NYPD officers were doing chokeholds on like every stop and frisk person that they were doing.
So they've known for years that the chokeholds are no-go.
Mm-hmm.
For years. If you watch Training Day, they talk about chokeholds. And that movie was made in 2001. 20 years ago, they were talking about how the chokehold is not a good move to make as far as the use of force is concerned. Yeah.
No,
What else,
there's
Paco?
so many things that can go wrong when you start messing with the neck. You know, you apply too much pressure and you can crush their windpipe, or, you know, in unfortunately George Floyd's case, you know, you get a knee on your neck for 9.5 minutes. And
I'm going to talk about this real quick, and so we can get this last thing that I wrote here.
Yep.
This police chief is the same police chief that sold the bag. And what I mean by that is last year, don't forget, he abandoned a police station and allowed looters to take it over. So while I agree, what this police chief says is super common sense, and that everything we see in the video of Chauvin is wrong. It doesn't make any sense to any reasonable officer. We need to talk about what the policy is, how this guy's been trained, how this guy has behaved, how this guy's been awarded or punished, what kind of punitive action was taken against him if he ever used any other uses of force, to try to establish whether he's reasonable or not. But this police chief sold the bag. So I don't want to put too much weight into that, too. And, you know, we need to remember that there's a lot of history of things that happened in the last year in the midst of waiting for this trial to take place. And this police chief, he's not exempt from judgment. You know what I mean?
mm-hmm.
Don't throw stones in a glass house. Right, Paco?
Mm-hmm.
All right, we're going to be kind of turning the corner here. Just a couple minutes left. I hope you liked the video today. but we're going to discuss Apple Monster's YouTube channel. He's been kind of an ambassador of goodwill to the Paco's Playground. We linked his channel in the description of a couple of our other videos, so please go over to Apple Monster, give him some love for us. Good kid, doing a lot of tech stuff. If you're into the tech stuff, and particularly Apple, go over there. If you're an Android guy, go over there and watch us shame him. But at any rate, it's a cool enough channel. The kid does a good job.
Yeah.
We're trying to get this channel off the ground, Paco's Playground, and more importantly for me, Paco's Insight, right? So please like and subscribe so that we can try to get this channel to take off. And if there's anything that you'd like to see us do, react to, or comment on, please link it in the comments, or you can write to Paco directly.
Mm-hmm.
But we really appreciate your support here. We've had kind of a lot of support coming out of the gate with this channel. A lot of people have reached out to Paco and myself and said that, the channel's it's slowly growing, but we love to make these videos, and we're very interested to see what kind of content you'd like us to push out. So please continue to reach out to us.
Yep. Yeah, we appreciate the support. I mean, if it wasn't for you guys, we wouldn't continue to make these videos, We wouldn't do it if you guys didn't enjoy it, and like we said from the get-go, we try to talk about different topics that not a lot of people like to talk about. Whether it's domestic violence, mental health, or even the Derek Chauvin case, which is very fine line with that stuff. But we talk about this type of stuff to keep you guys in the loop of currently what's going on, and to bring some light into, other topics that may be important to us, or we just feel isn't talked about enough in social media. We got a couple more minutes? Yeah, 20. Yeah, got a couple more minutes.
Well, I mean, we can wrap it up a little early.
We can wrap it up.
We're probably going to do another video right now about something a little lighter, because this is a pretty heavy topic.
Yep.
So we'll try to do something a little lighter for you guys, but we hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned for more videos on the Derek Chauvin trial and some of our insight into this. All right. Keep it real.
Yeah, keep it real, guys. We'll see you in the next one.